chapter 3 of the CPT informative videos for the NASM Certified Personal Trainer experience. This chapter is something that we don't typically go over in my university lectures simply because we have a full exercise and sports psychology course that we talk about. But with NASM's material, they do cover a lot about the psychological aspects of exercise and how it's really more about how we want to work on adherence, more about behavior modification, influences. So it's not just about what happens within the brain. All right. We really want to know that exercise obviously has a very, very large benefit on mental health, as seen through a lot of research that's out there regarding everything from bipolar, depression, anxiety, all being those symptoms that are affected by within the brain. Exercise can help reduce some of those outbursts or negative feelings or fear of anything. So let's dive into it. Let's talk about the basics and then get into how we can work on helping our mental state within our clients. All right. So, within fitness and wellness, we know that there is a massive role in psychology. Although I'm not currently training individuals, when I was training individuals, one of the things that I did realize is that there is a large psychological component where you almost feel like people come to you and they bring their burdens, their problems. They really bring a lot of baggage, and sometimes those are those massive barriers that come along with what happens when you're trying to develop a new pattern of fitness and wellness. All right, so within our chapter here, what we're looking for is that psychological aspect. So what are we talking about? An area of science that focuses on people and how the mind and the feelings may influence their behavior. All right, so that encompasses a lot. There's a lot to unpack there, but understand what are some of the major key points of mind and feelings: motivation, self-esteem, social influences. All of these have ways on top of mood to be a major effector of how exercise becomes a regular behavior in your life, or how it can become a burnout behavior in terms of people just losing that drive. So we have to be aware that there can be some negative factors that come from it as well. That's why proper planning of exercise can really make a huge difference in that. All right. Psychology influences the decision to either be or not be active. All right. You make that conscious decision on what you want to do that day, that week, that month, that year. All right. So if you're looking at it from that standpoint of, well, I don't really want to take part in it, well, then you know what? You're probably not going to do it. All right. Like we said, motivation, goal. We didn't say goals before, but motivation, goals, barriers. I said that term before, but things that get in the way. Self-confidence. And there's those social influences. All of these factors can have a large influence, both positively and negatively. Obviously, we're looking for the positive factors. Okay. When working with somebody new or somebody who is returning from a hiatus, we want to work on behavior change. That's going to be critical in getting these people to get back into that rhythm, that routine. Okay. And then a quality program that is needed and is necessary so that you can help develop certain needs so that you can basically really work on that retention. Now, retention is being able to hold on to things, and obviously hold on to things in a positive light. If you retain, that means that you're gathering and holding on to key pieces of information that will hopefully not allow you to drop out again or get back to where you were, or to get to where you're going if you're brand new. All right. So psychology really can come into play when it comes to fitness and wellness. One of the things that we have to understand is the difference between what's a psychologist and what's a psychiatrist. Now, a psychologist is usually somebody who has a degree of some sort, usually either a master's or a doctorate, that uses what we call psychotherapy. Whereas a psychiatrist is somebody with a medical degree that they are the only ones of those two that can prescribe medications that go along with the psychotherapy. So if it gets to a point where somebody has, needs a little bit of assistance, a psychologist might be the way to go. If a psychologist feels as though they're having an issue with developing the rapport, or they're having a problem with, maybe that person needs medication, they might send them to a psychiatrist to then get a little bit deeper into what the root causes are, and then maybe medication might be an issue. So medication is not always the first step, but it could be a step that could help somebody depending upon what the causes or issues are that stem from their feelings and their behaviors. So what are we looking for here? There's a lot of factors that come into play when it comes to the psychology part, but one of them is motivation. We said this before. Now, with motivation, there's an intensity and there is a direction in your effort that you're putting out so that you can enjoy or not enjoy activity, or if you engage in a certain behavior. I hate to use this example, but you could have somebody who has a really big drive and motivation toward doing a lot of cocaine, or you could have somebody who has a really large drive and motivation that wants to exercise and compete. All right. So I know it's a really weird example, but I just want you to understand that motivation doesn't really have this. It has a intensity, a large quantity, and it has a direction, whatever direction that might be, whether it's, positive, negative, whether it's moving forward, moving backward. You can have motivation to decline, right? Not really the best case scenario. All right. But a lot of times motivation is used for the wrong, there's a motivation in the wrong manner. Now, sometimes it could be an issue where, you might be motivated because you have a health problem and the doctor's like, you have to lose weight. Well, the motivation's there to get healthier. Maybe you have beach season coming up, which we know is coming up in a little while. Beach weather, maybe that's motivation to change, but it's not just what happens during that quote unquote beach season. It's what happens afterwards as well. Are you still motivated and still driving to continue to look and feel the same way you did going into quote beach season versus just all year round? All right. So of motivation, there's 3 distinct terms that we want, and you'll probably see these in a test of some sort. A motivation, which is basically non-motivation. You have extrinsic motivation, which is you're participating in something and you have this drive for a reward or recognition. And then you also have intrinsic motivation, which is you're doing it for you. You get this sense of self-satisfaction. All right. There are examples on the left there. Now, the overriding question is always, which one is better, extrinsic or intrinsic? All right. And that really is up to the individual. But if you're solely relying on extrinsic motivation, eventually the amount of rewards and recognition that you get is going to start to deteriorate. So you have to find those inner drives, that inner satisfaction, and that has to be the main reason why you are involved in specific types of activities. Okay? So, we also said that there's barriers, common barriers to exercise. Now, these are things that get in the way, all right? In that first orange section, busy lifestyle, family responsibilities, work obligations, social commitments. Barriers are always those things that they are fighting and competing with motivation. Barriers are fighting against motivation to basically help you in a negative way stop your exercise. All right. Some are physical, some are mental, some are based on perception. All right. So physical, illness, injury, lack of transportation, lack of safe places to exercise, all those are physical barriers. Perceived barriers are that you don't have enough time, you don't have enough energy. All right. And then also there's barriers with, as individuals age and as your responsibilities shift, those barriers can, as you age, changes in the ability to move effectively, that's a real life barrier. And as you start to age, you have to find ways to work around those barriers, and it's more challenging. Responsibility shifts. What if you're having a baby? All right, you have 2 months until it's time for baby. 2 months goes by. Now you have this baby. Priorities change a little bit, but does that mean you have to negate everything that comes with activity. Not necessarily, but we understand that those things happen, so we have to work with them as they go. Time's another one, all right? We always want to make sure, we want to make sure that time is always balanced, because we don't want to take away from special events and occasions. We don't want to take away from responsibilities. But we have to understand that we have to use time correctly, because it really does affect you in such a tough and challenging way. So, like it says here, time is often cited as a barrier against many healthy behaviors, including exercise, proper food intake, and overall stress. So, working with people, if you look on the left there, it says keep a log of how time is spent over the course of a week to help identify how time is spent. That's the best trick is for time management. Write out everything that you're doing in a day, every day. So it's like, okay, well, I see that I have a 3-hour gap here, but I'm saying I'm always busy. Well, what about that 3-hour gap? What about on the way home? You get out of work at 4, but you don't have to really eat. You don't really eat until 6. There's a 2-hour window right there. So we have to address this and make sure that people understand that we can take our time back if we know where our time has holes. Okay, and that's where we have to set priorities, set goals to make time available when needed. All right. With goals, this kind of goes right in from time to goals, and we just talked about goals in terms of how time can affect them. But setting unrealistic goals is probably the worst case scenario that you can do. If someone says, "Oh, my goal is to lose 100 pounds in 4 months," then you know what? It's probably going to be a pretty tough goal to reach. So we have to help our people realize and understand what goals are, what appropriate goals are, but also we cannot set a goal for them. So that's where it gets a little tricky. All right. So I gave you an example of an extreme weight loss, result in a short period of time. One of the things too is completing a marathon before even attempting a 5K. Well, maybe your first goal should be attempt a 5K and then progress from there, whatever it might be. So you have to be able to be flexible. You have to be able to adjust. You have to be able to be progressive in small steps. Okay. So with unrealistic goals comes more barriers, comes more frustration, comes more disappointment. Therefore, it leads to you feeling defeated, and therefore you end up quitting whatever you're trying to do. And most people, it's just quitting exercise outright. So we have to be aware of that. So you have to make sure that goals are, we have to follow that SMART goal mentality: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time specific. And if we can do that, we can have more realistic goals and take away that ability of not being objective, not setting too many goals at one time, and then not being able to adjust, and be settled and stagnant on one specific thing. Being flexible is optimal. Okay. An example down below is that, it says right here, an outcome goal might be you want to place in the top 10 in a 10K race. Well, your process goal, what are you going to do is you're going to jog for 45 minutes Monday through Friday, starting at 6:30 a.m., going for 45 minutes, and then you start your day. That's just one example of how you can do it. So what's your outcome and how are you going to do it? And that's where that's where the SMART goal comes into play. Another example of everything we talked about was that lack of social support. Ways that other people assist you either directly or indirectly to help you maintain a specific behavior, right? So a lack of social support makes it very challenging. Me personally, I don't really necessarily need the social support. I've been doing this for a long time in terms of exercise. That, sure, it feels good that, when someone's cheering you on or if you have a partner you're working with. But again, I've been doing it for a while now that I have some of that pretty good intrinsic motivation, that internal motivation to keep striving for self-satisfaction. So my need for social support is not numero uno, but it does help, right? So like it says here, if you don't have social support, you're going, it's going to be frustrating because you don't have somebody who's going to encourage you to participate. You don't have somebody who you can discuss and bounce ideas off of. You may not have somebody who might be your ride, your transportation, right? You don't have somebody who's going to be able to give you feedback, accurate information. And just having somebody that's working with you makes a big difference, right? So an exercise partner really can become critical. So we have to be aware of that. So social support, another very fine piece of information that, that can help change behaviors because you have somebody there or some people there that are willing to work with you. And it doesn't even have to be people that can work with you and you have to pay them. It might just be a friend or a family member or a spouse. It might, depending upon what situation you're in. All right. So one of the things that we want to talk about here is social physique anxiety. Well, with anxiety, it's basically having fear over things that really you have no control over. But this is a specific type of anxiety, right? It's when you look at other people and you perceive them because they're negatively evaluating who you are as a person. A person who does not regularly visit a facility may think that other people are looking and staring at them, when in actuality, sometimes those same people who they think are looking at them are probably feeling the same way about others. Or what most people don't realize is that there are people, majority of people that go to work out are there for them. They're doing it because they want to be there and they want to work. So they're focused on them. So, you have to get rid of that negative connotation in your head that somebody is always looking at you. So therefore, what happens is if you do feel that way, you get anxious about your appearance, then you start feeling you're not adequate enough in terms of your mental and your physical state. And then therefore you end up comparing for no reason. All right. I'm pausing here because it's a lot to ingest. You go to a gym and you see people that look a certain way, they dress a certain way, they act a certain way. Some people might be more confident than others. Some people might be more introverted than others. All these things affect people's psyche, and we have to be the ones when we are trainers and coaches, we have to be the ones that can say, you know what, it's not like that. And that's why, especially when I was a personal trainer, I used to introduce everybody to everybody. A brand new person to somebody who I know looks the part. And by looks the part, I mean they might look like they're like, for example, you got that big jack guy in the corner doing his own thing. He's probably one of the nicest people that you'll ever meet, but he's intimidating. There might be a female who is just in the free weight section, because this is always the section that scares people when they first show up, and she's doing crazy things, and shows really large feats of strength, looks the part, is super well put together. She is intimidating for people, but you know what? She will be the first one to help you when the time comes. So sometimes you have to realize that just an introduction can help get rid of those stigmas very quickly. All right. So we got to make sure that we get those people to understand that it's okay to work out in front of other people. And it's okay because you know what? Everybody had a starting place. Everybody had a letdown. Everybody had a misfire. And we have to be able to be aware that sometimes the people that you think are intimidating are the ones that probably have the most information for, your clients, because they've been there, done that, just like you have. Okay. When we talk about convenience and ambivalence, convenience we know about. We know what it is for things to be convenient. Ambivalence, though, is like it says, it describes a person's state of mixed feelings about a situation. If you're ambivalent, all right, you're going to find easy cop-outs, easy excuses of why workouts or exercise sessions don't fit into your lifestyle, and you're going to keep trying to find those ways, all right? They know, someone who's ambivalent knows what's going on, but they just don't feel like they can grasp it, and they don't feel like it's, a way that they can put it into their life. Convenience, on the other hand, is where we just know that it's there, it's easy for the taking, but some people find training to be inconvenient. It's a disruption in their normal routine. Well, you know what? It's a disruption in their normal routine because they never put it into a routine before, and so it makes them feel very uncomfortable. So what do we got to do? We got to find ways that we can make it work. On the way home, if you pass by a gym every day, That's a convenience. People need to take advantage of that. Stop there, then go home. Don't go home, say I'm going to change, and then go, because you know what's going to happen? They're not going to change. They're not going to go. Meaning change into their clothes, their workout clothes. Take them with you. When you drive by that gym on the way home, you stop. It's a must. All right? So convenience is always optimal. But when things become inconvenient, they become more difficult for people, and that's a challenge. Social influences on exercise, right? So they're constantly present in our exercise behaviors, all right? And these influences basically can take someone and move them either one way or the other, right? They can either take and help you move stronger into a structured exercise routine, or it could pull you farther away, all right? So just like social support, with that social support, that social influence, really the main thing is who's really giving you information and what type of information are you getting? Because although people may sound knowledgeable, and what I mean by this is even personal trainers who are hired by the gym, they may sound like they're doing well to play the part, but they're only just playing the part, because you hear them and you're like, whoa, what kind of information were you just giving to that person? Because that's going to make them leave in 3 weeks because you're giving them really bad information. So we don't want to be those people. We want to have that education and that knowledge that will take us and move us into the direction of, we want to provide positive social support, but also support that's knowledgeable, it's backed up by some sort of research, and it's the type, and what type are you giving? Is it only visual? Is it only verbal? We have to be well-rounded in that approach. All right. So it's not just person-to-person interaction. It's also social media. I wish I could swear right now, but I have a really strong dislike for a lot of things that I see on TikTok, on Instagram, and Facebook Reels. It drives me nuts as to the misdirection that people are given. And so that's why you have to make sure that you know your social influences. The people who are sometimes the most knowledgeable are unfortunately the people that have some of the least amount of followers. You might have like somebody like myself who has a doctorate, who's very knowledgeable on what happens in exercise, and someone like myself may only have like 5,000 followers. But you have these influencers who have 3.5 million followers, and you cringe every time you hear them. And then they're the ones that are the butt of the joke when you have somebody doing a post about them, and they're doing a mirrored video saying this is what this person is saying, please don't believe them. But then it's like, well, who am I supposed to believe at that point? And it's so frustrating and infuriating that we have to do that as professionals. All right. So we have to be clear on that. So what kind of support? Instrumental, emotional, informational, and then companionship support. Instrumental, these, like it says here, actions that directly facilitate a behavior to happen. Like if and you look over to the right, there's your examples. Transportation to a facility, paying for someone's membership, watching your children. All right, those are all instrumental. They're instrumental in helping you get to what you want to do. All right. Sometimes it might be you have to pick up your friend on the way there because they need it, right? Emotional support, encouragement, giving feedback, positive or constructive, but doing it the right way, listening, showing empathy, all those are parts of being emotionally supportive. Informational is giving sound advice, providing education, and making people realize through that education the risks and rewards that are there. And then lastly, companionship is just being part of it. Exercise with somebody, accompanying somebody, during a session. Even if it might be a beginner weightlifting class and you're an experienced weightlifter and your friend is just starting, do the class with them, make them feel more comfortable, right? And then obviously find physically active options when you're out in social scenarios. All right, so all those are really viable types of support. And then, another example is group influences. This helps, group influences help with decision making, all right? People who are, really, see, this is tough though. I agree with it, but I also have some hesitancy on this. Sources: family, parental, exercise leaders, the exercise group. be very careful with your family and be very careful with your parental sources. And the reason why I say that is because they might have seen something in the newspaper and it's like, oh, this is the tell all be all. And you're like, that's been disproven now for 7 years. All right. So that makes a big difference. So we have to be aware that those types of things can happen. Right. So where you get your source of information from is very important. So what do we want to make sure when we talk about leadership components? We want to make sure with group influences, the leader's qualities, their leadership style, because different leadership styles can pull a certain person in versus others. What situational factors are there? Is it small versus large group? Are people adjusting based on size of a group? Those are all things that happen situationally. And then the follower's qualities. The leaders should consider the qualities of the follower, including age, gender, and exercise experience. All of those things make a massive difference because you can't treat people of the same age, of different ages the same because it's only going to affect them. Males versus females, that might change the direction on how you are going to give and influence others, and then exercise experience, a new versus an older, newer versus a veteran-based exercise experience person makes a big difference. And so all of those have this impact on a group, all right, and how we make decisions based on working within groups. All right. So, with this group exercise, some of the benefits that come with accountability, having people being more accountable, comparison. Now, you're comparing yourself versus others in a group exercise. Like, let's just take CrossFit, for example. CrossFit's one of those things where you're in a group class, right? And people can say what they want about CrossFit, positive or negative, but ultimately, people are still trying to do the best they can, but eventually they'll see other people's scores and they can rate themselves on a comparison to, oh, that person's been doing it for a while. My score is pretty close, even though I've only been doing it for a short period. So you can see where the comparison comes into play. Competition, there's nothing wrong with friendly competition. Camaraderie, working with people, building connections with people, amazing. Only helps you when you're trying to stay focused on exercise, especially with group exercise. Consistency, just constantly having that schedule and knowing when you're coming in and out. Energy, that having that high energy, people are drawn to people with high energy. People are drawn to people like you all who are studying to take the CPT because you're going to have that high energy. If you come in with low energy, guess what you're going to get? Low energy output from your people, okay? Same with intensity. Come with that intensity, you're going to get it. Mindless. Now, this sounds crazy, but, people want to show up and they want to be able to do things and just do them. They don't want to have to think about it. You're there to make the thinking. They're there to do the work. So don't make them think. Make them be able to do. Motivation we talked about, and social ability we got about. Bring people together. That's the key to that. And all of these will help you to get into that group exercise mode. So the psychological benefits, we want that positive mood. We want to be able to improve our self-esteem and our body image. We want to be able to improve our sleep. We also want to be able to reduce depression and anxiety. Now, depression and anxiety does not mean it has to be clinical. It just means that it will help you to feel less low and less fearful when things really shouldn't be fearful or feeling low. Okay? So that's really a key component to that. So those are all psychological benefits that we work on. And improved sleep has a gambit of more positive traits physiologically, not just psychologically. But when you're tired, you're not psychologically well. When you're rested, you feel better mentally. Unless you get too much sleep, and then that's just a whole nother realm where it can change you up a little bit. But, we're looking for exercise producing these higher benefits to help us feel better, look better, feel like we look better, or even just know we look better. And then just making us feel better all around mentally about our thoughts and our decisions. All right. And so it really is a key to us feeling good about ourselves. So take this chapter, study those key terms that we talked about in each one of those sequences. that we discussed. Each slide has a couple of key points on there that we talked about. So use those as a takeaway so that we can then evolve into making ourselves not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but an exercise specialist who understands the mental component of how exercise is beneficial. Okay? So this is chapter 3. Again, pause it, ask questions if you need to. That's what the chat and the YouTube video is for. So use it. Definitely use it. But understand, mind over matter, definitely huge. And being more psychologically ready only makes you more physiologically better. Okay? Thank you for listening to chapter 3, and I hope you all have a great day. Take care.